I am to be here. For those who don't know me, I'm Sam Shankland. I was 2018 US Chess Champion, and I still am a full-time pro player, and I've written some books, and I do some lectures. So I care very deeply about bringing chess to as many passionate Americans, particularly young Americans, as I can. In addition to my native California, I've done book signings, lectures, and stuff in New York, in Massachusetts, in Connecticut, in Michigan, in Illinois, Missouri, North Carolina, now Florida, Colorado, all over the United States. And I've been delighted to see that in all corners of our massive country, there's such incredible passion and talent for chess. And now I'm adding Florida to the list. So hopefully none of you guys are too hungover from last Friday night. It is University of Florida. We all know what goes on here. But with that in mind, let's get this show on the road. So for the first session of the lecture today, which will be 2 hours, what I want to do is talk about my first two books, Small Steps 1 and 2, which are all about pawns. The premise of Small Steps 1 is that pawns don't move backwards. The premise of Small Steps 2 is that pawns can become queens. Both of these are very relevant factors in a chess game. While they're very simple rules of chess, and being able to use these rules to your advantage is incredibly important. And I want to, within each book, I want to talk about it in two ways. One is I want to give some examples from the book, such as the position we see here, this game between Sturz and Federer from the Polish-Ukraine match in 2012. But in addition to that, what I want to do is mention that I don't write books to get rich. I think anyone who writes books to get rich is an idiot. Some people did get rich writing books, but they got lucky. The big reason that I chose to write these books, and I've chosen to do as much chess content as I do, is that I think it helps me become a better player. It gives me an opportunity to study topics that I didn't necessarily study as much as I should have in the past. And furthermore, if you think you understand something, maybe you do, but you're going to be much more confident you understand it when you can explain it at a level somebody else can get. So these books gave me an opportunity to look into topics that I was really interested in. And so the other part of this lecture is I want to show some games that I played after my books came out, after I had done this work, where the factors that we had seen in these books were very relevant and started showing up in my own games, and that I think helped lead to my own improvement. So to start off here, we're looking at this game between Federer and Sturz. White obviously has good winning chances with his queen pawn up in this endgame, but this game is not going to win itself. Probably some of you have heard the idea, all rook endgames are draws. This is of course an oversimplification, but it does mean you have to take it seriously. And here, it's actually not totally trivial for white to come with a winning plan. So another thing I should mention, I should have said in the beginning, is I don't believe in passive learning. I can talk at you guys all I want, you can listen, and it will sound all nice and make sense. It will not turn you into better players if you don't interact with the material yourselves. So I'm constantly going to be asking questions of the class, and you ask people to raise their hands. So from here, I'd like to see, what do people think white's general plan should be in the upcoming position to try to convert his extra pawn? Yes, sir. Hang on, I lost you some points. So you can speak a little bit louder. So you said h4 and then what? Okay. Okay. Well, we're definitely better with the pawn up, but well, when you have an extra pawn, you have to think, how am I actually going to make my extra pawn count, and how am I going to win this game? And while I don't think you've made any bad moves, and you certainly haven't spoiled your advantage, you have not convinced me that your extra pawn is counting yet. So yes, sir.
Well, I was thinking that like you play the side of the liberty, so like you play on the queen side. I didn't win the move yet, but that was just my game on that.
Okay. Pretty fast pawn. Okay, fair enough. Yes.
First thing I do is I get rid of the A-pen house that pawn went anywhere.
Sorry, can you speak a little bit louder?
Yeah, first thing I'll do is get rid of that. I was going to trade assuming it's my turn.
You would trade on it. You would trade on b5.
Turn?
You said you would trade on b5?
No, A to B5, yeah. Is it white's turn?
Yes, that's white's play.
Yeah, I will get rid of the A pawn. I don't think that A pawn's going to go anywhere. We have corner pawn. So I have to analyze that a little more, but I would definitely do a trade right now.
Okay, so there's a few interesting principles that are on display here. I think some of you guys might be misunderstanding a little bit. The first one is, it's a very basic rule, but you've probably heard it many times, but you know, it's relevant all the way up to the highest levels of premise, which is that when you're ahead in material, you want to trade pieces because pawn up endgame is going to be pawn endgame is going to win. When you're behind in material, you want to trade pawns. Like for example, rook bishop and pawn against rook is going to be a draw. So in general, trading pawns I think should be in black's favor. So I'm not thrilled with the move a takes b5. Another thing that I think is important to understand specifically about rook endgames when you're playing with the pawn up is the question is, do you want to be trying to make a passed pawn or not? And I think the only time that you ever really want to be aiming to make a passed pawn in a rook endgame where you're a pawn up is if you think there's a reasonable chance you're going to go promote it and become a queen without your opponent being able to stop you. So if you said make a passed pawn here, let's say white were to play something like a takes b5 check, a takes b5, b3, and quickly throw c4, what do we think the odds are that this pawn is going to become a queen and black is not going to stop it? Pretty darn low, because black's king is in front. So if you don't believe that you're actually going to promote a pawn, I think making a passed pawn is usually wrong. Because usually it can be stopped. In this case, it's because the king is in front, but also you could imagine situations where if you have an extra passed pawn and the enemy rook is behind it, like you're sort of stuck. So in rook endgames, I don't think making a passed pawn is the right idea unless you really think you're going to have a chance to promote. So the next question becomes, if we're not going to make a passed pawn, how does our queenside majority have any relevance? What can it do for us? Yes?
Can we play like a5, like read that rook on a6 and try to attack it?
Yes, creating a second weakness on a6 is definitely a good idea. I believe that a5 is the second best move. It preserves very good winning chances, but I think there is an even stronger one. And it all comes down to the premise of my book, pawns do not move backwards. Now we're already looking at a relatively advanced game, but in chapters 1 through 5, what I talked about were the 5 reasons that a pawn may want to move backwards. I'm going from memory here, it's been a while. But reason number 1 is that a pawn can be too far forward in the position because it's simply separated from the rest of its force, it's going to get captured. That's the simplest one, the pawn is weak. The second one would be the pawn moving too far forward has lost control over a key square that you wish you had control over, or no longer defend something that you wish you could defend. Another reason could be it blocks your pieces and you can't move it back because now your pieces, their lines are blocked. And then the final one would be it makes a hook, which means, like, for example, if you're talking about why is the knight orc better than the dragon, because in the dragon when white goes h4, h5, he opens the h file, because the pawn on g6 is a hook, while in the knight orc putting the pawn on h6, black will go g6, it's not a hook. In any case here, what I talked about later in the book was not just the presence of avoiding these errors in your own game, but also provoking your opponent's pawns forwards in ways that they won't enjoy. So if we think about this position here, is there a pawn advance we would really like black to make that would sort of ruin his position? Yes, sir?
F5.
Yes, why would f5 be a mistake?
Because it makes g6 weak.
Hang on, sorry. Yes, if black were to provoke f5, he has weakened the g6 pawn. That pawn no longer will have a defender. And what square has it also potentially weakened?
G5.
Yeah, so if we could provoke black into playing the move f5, then if we were to play Bodekas and stick our king on the g5 square, we would assume black would immediately collapse. Right? Well, if this pawn were able to go to f6 instead, for example, then we don't necessarily have a way through to cause massive weaknesses. So once we've figured this out, what's the most natural move to like consider? Yes, sir? Yeah, so I think it's very important to start with rook f4 directly and not to flick in a takes b5. Because we really want black to play f5. Let's instead imagine he plays the move rook e7 and says, I will not cooperate with you. What do we play now? Yes?
Rook f6.
Exactly. And now we're seeing it's very nice that we did not exchange these a-pawns, because had these a-pawns been off the board and black could play, I mean, he'd probably still be lost, but let's say he would play king c7 or something, at least he has things sort of under control. Now that he has to put the king back on b7 in order to avoid losing the second pawn, and we can play a5 to fix this pawn, what we see is black's rook is stuck on the 7th rank for the rest of the game, and black's king is stuck between b7 and a7 for the rest of the game. And the difference in piece activity is absolutely staggering. White can walk his king straight to d6, and that should be that. So that I think is relatively straightforward. Like I gave a variation here, king d3, king b7, king d4. I mean, I don't know what else black can do apart from just wait, and then eventually the rook is kicked away, but will take on f7, and this game is over. So that's pretty convincing. But let's say black plays the move f5 and sort of calls our bluff, so to speak. It's not like we can get the king to g5 right away. Obviously, that would be nice. But what's the rest of the next stage of our plan going to look like? Yes, sir.
Pawn to G4.
So this goes back to what we were talking about before. You don't want to be trading pawns when you're ahead material. So here, liquidating the king side, I mean, our goal should be to bring the king to g5 and basically take all three of these pawns for nothing. When you start liquidating the king side, my suspicion is black will hold this. Like, let's say we take this stuff and then I will go rook e6. I'm left with this one weakness on g6 that I have pretty well defended. Your king is cut off. My suspicion is this is pretty close to a draw. So we definitely don't want to be trading pawns so fast if we can help it. Yes, sir.
What about rook to f3 and then offer to trade the rooks on e3?
That's definitely a thought, but you have to be careful about your a4 pawn hanging. I think I will probably take this one from you. And this is not just the pawn, it also means when I bring my rook to d8, I will have annoying counterplay. So that's definitely part of white's plan, but I think this is the wrong moment for it. So, yes?
What about pawn h4 and then g5?
Pawn h4 and then what, sorry?
G5, you want that position.
Like, I don't follow what you mean by g5. h4 I understand, but what g5 you want black to play?
Pawn g5.
Like white play in here? Okay, you have to go through this square to get there, which is going to be a bit of trouble. But h4 is fine. I don't think there's a huge need for anything here. h4 was played. I don't think that was strictly necessary, but black didn't really do anything anyway. But here what we need to do is come up with the right plan for white to try to win the game. And we have to be thinking, how can I use my queenside pawn mass to my advantage here? Yes?
Can you play a5?
Yeah, that's a good place to start. I think it's very important that we want to keep pawns on the board when we can. But okay, black played rook e5. And now what? Yes?
Now the idea of rook f3 to e3.
Yeah, that's fine. I think in the game white played rook d4, but basically that's where we want to bring the rook. The rook going to f4 has served its purpose. It managed to provoke black into playing f5. That's all we wanted from him. There's no more need for the rook to remain on f4. And it's not like, and because of the permanent nature of pawn moves, once white leaves f4 with his rook, black can't just go, oh, now I'll put my pawn back on f7. That's not how chess works. Pawns don't move backwards. This is the permanent nature of pawn play in chess, which I think is extremely important to understand. So what we see now is rook d4 and then rook d3. And the question becomes, what does this extra pawn on the queen side do for us? And it actually does something very important. Even though it looks like we're not making a queen anytime soon, what is this queen side pawn mass doing for us?
Keeps his king on this. Keeps the king it keeps the king watching that extra pawn.
I guess, but at the same time, his king is cut off on the d file anyway. We didn't need the extra pawn for that. Yes.
I mean, what's his pawn?
I had something else in mind. Yes.
Black can never trade rooks.
Yes, that's exactly right. Our goal is to bring the king to the g5 square. When we do that, we will take his entire king side without much of a fight. Now, the problem is we can't bring our king to the g5 square because his rook is cutting us off. So we want to, in order to get our king over there, we're going to need to try to break this cut on the e file. Black cannot trade the rooks. This is very important. Which means that if we were to play rook e3, if we did not have this extra pawn on the queen side and black had taken and bring the king to f6, he would save the game. But because he has this pawn down on the queen side, he is going to be unable to exchange these rooks. And as a result, I mean, here's Ritz played rook b8, which I think was very cooperative because now white did not even need to play rook e3. But even if he were to simply wait after rook e3 and when this king starts coming, like here, for example, rook d3 back is fine. Again, the rook has served its purpose on e3. It got the king across the e file, doesn't need to stay. And so now next thing, the white king will come up to g5, and I don't think black has any serious hope to save this game. So, for completeness' sake, I'll just show how the game went, but I think it was relatively straightforward. But yeah, here, white brought the king to g5. And it doesn't particularly matter that he lost his queen sides. This race is not going to be remotely close. White is totally winning. So, yeah, here, Darius sits in enough. So basically what really made a strong impression on me from this game from Fedorchuk was, if you look, his rook started on d4. And after rook f4, yeah, okay, he played h4 and a5 first. But pretty quickly, he just brought his rook right back to d4. He was moving his pieces back and forth, and the whole premise was, normally when you move your pieces back and forth and your opponent does the same, you make a draw by repetition. But because of the permanent nature of the pawn move that we see here, having gone back and forth, so to speak, was very helpful for white because it provoked this pawn to a weaker square. So with that in mind, unless there are any questions or any comments on this game, I'd like to move on to another one. Okay, great. So next up, I want to briefly speak about the game that made me US champion. This is my game with the Wonder Liang in 2018. Started off as a Karo Khan, and he played this really funky move E5, as I've never really seen it before. And this position was well known, and I mean, I had played some Karo Khan with black at the time, and I always played Queen C8, but Queen D7 I think is the main move. But E5 is wacky and wild. Just for curiosity's sake, does anyone know the best move for white? Yeah.
Pawn on d4 takes e5.
That is not the best move. Anyone else want to try? Yes. That is also not the best move. Anybody else know it? Yes. That is also not the best move. Yes.
Bishop g5.
Also not the best move. All right, so this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's sort of interesting. So basically, the first question, whenever you get hit with a move like E5, especially if it's done immediately and you know the guy's in preparation, like you know that it's a computer, of course, so you know that it's not going to be making huge mistakes, you should always wonder what happens if I take it. And we'll see after DE5, like this is the most obvious move. If we can do this, we should, right? What do we expect black to play? Knight d7 I don't think is great. Yeah.
Knight h5.
Knight h5, we can kick this bishop and then we're going to take knight e5 next. I mean, I'm not totally convinced black is equalizing here because he's going to be left with the isolated pawn and then h5 is a little sideline, but we're definitely losing back the pawn immediately and our pieces are going to kick backwards. If bishop takes e5, how do we expect black to respond? I think that's actually a mistake. Because after d5, there's so many reasons annoying tracks of d5. Yes?
Queen e7.
Yes, it's a good move. This is actually very annoying. Black will castle long, and if you play something like f4, this is the kind of position where I think black is pretty happy that he didn't take on e5 yet, because he will have a move like f6 available, which he wouldn't have had if he had taken e5 directly. Furthermore, if he had taken e5 directly, like some checks on d5, it would be really annoying. So anyhow, what we're seeing here, after queen e7, what's the move that we really, really would like to make in order to defend this bishop, but we sort of can't right now? Yeah, we really would love to play knight f3, right? But unfortunately, he can take it. So what we actually see here is in this position that if we play d takes e5, the problem that we're facing is that black has the move knight h5 there. And if we play bishop takes d5, the problem that we're facing is that we don't have the move knight f3 available. This is starting to question black's coordination a little bit. Is there any way we can poke him?
h3.
Yes. We counterattack this bishop on g4. Where does this bishop go? Back to d7? Okay. Put my knight on f3. Thank you very much. Wasn't it better to go to h5 so this was impossible? Okay. Please play knight h5. The point is here, the bishop is on its perfect square. It's on g4. We need to have h5, black needs h5 available for his knight, but he also needs to make sure that that he'll be able to take an f3. As such, g4 is the only square this bishop can be on. And as soon as we poke it, and it has to move, black has a huge problem on his hands. And here already, I think black is basically okay, but he really needs to know some very tough moves. For example, I'm quite convinced that here the best move is knight f5, which is not the first move that you would think of. It's a very difficult move. Introducing even more tension to the position. And following queen c2, the computer says the best move is e takes f4. In my opinion, the best move is bishop d1. These are not easy moves for a human. I think it's, I mean, if we're gonna get a structure like this one, if we're gonna get a structure like this one here, my opinion is that it would be better for black if this pawn were back on h3, and as such, I think you should play bishop d1 to lose this bishop on the d1 square and not allow white to take on g4 instead. The computer disagrees with me. It says that black should play this way, and that it should go pawn, that he should go pawn grabbing with knight takes g4, which to me feels incredibly scary. Now during the game, I think the computer said the best move is queen e2 check here. I believe I wanted to play king f1. Making sure that now queen e2 is a real threat because queen e7 will not win the queen, so black will lose a piece. And furthermore, I can actually be a little bit tricky. It's not so strange, for example, for white to take on h7, and after rook takes h7, instead of sidelining my bishop, I'll go bishop d5 check and take with the queen. So this can get very scary for black, and I believe the computer said his only move is h5, which does not strike me as very human. And then with knight d2, rook e1, the piece is coming. It's interesting. In any case, a wonder took on f4 directly, but now he's not in time to take on g4 because the b7 pawn is loose. Anyhow, I want to skip through this phase a little bit here because the relevant stuff is coming up. I think bishop e2 was a strong move to prevent black from playing h6. There came knight g7, knight f3, knight e6. Here, I found bishop d5, which is the best move. I knew before the game that white's best plan in this position was to pressure the e5 square, so this move sort of came naturally to me. Especially now, like, black's play is not subtle. With knight e6, he wants bishop e7, and that pawn is hard to defend. So I thought it was important to pressure him instead, and here indeed, if black does bishop e7 after queen a4, I think white's threats are significantly stronger than black's. For example, after knight takes g5, I can take on c6, bc6, and knight e5, threatening the c6 pawn. After rook d6, I believe the computer said the best move here is c4, which strikes me as a little bit inhuman. I wanted to simply point out that black has some overworked pieces after knight c6, and I think this endgame should be better for white thanks to the structure. In any case, a wonder played bishop g7. I went queen a4 anyway, so rook d6. And around here, if we recall, what we had seen in this better check game was that what white did was he made moves that provoked pawns forward in ways that weakened his opponent's key squares. Now that was a totally different position because it was a rook endgame, and here we have a middle game with opposite side castling and opposite colored bishops, so clearly a very different position. But a lot of those same themes are still fresh in my mind. And my next few moves, I think, really highlighted how I was able to make weaknesses in black's camp. So does anyone have a thought on how white might want to proceed in this position? Yes, why not d3?
Try to scooch the other knight.
I don't think we're any.
Just adding another piece to the,
Yeah. Okay,
adding
so
another piece to the attack.
one thing, your second sentence there was better, but in the first sentence, I heard a word that I really, really don't like. Four-letter word, the word just. I really don't like the word just in the context of just because I hear the word just used under one of two main circumstances. One is to sort of try to oversimplify something that's not meant to be oversimplified, like, oh, just bring the piece here, just like that, as if this move that I'm making is the end of the discussion, end of the variation. I've seen it all, there's nothing more to see. That's almost never true. This is chess that we're playing. It's a very complex game, and it's very deep, and there's a lot to it. And the other time that I hear the word just used is to justify, no pun intended, unambitious thought. Oh, I have a very dangerous, like, oh no, I just want to give him a nice little pawn, just give me this one, something small. When in chess, you want to be ambitious and take the whole cake when it's given to you. So, that said, you did suggest the right move. So, I like knight b3, but it's for a pretty specific reason. If we're thinking about where this knight is going next, what do we have in mind? Yes, sir. Yeah, so if we can play knight c5 and destabilize black's e6 knight, which is probably his best piece, that will relieve the pressure upon our g5 pawn. It will put more annoyance in black's position. It will blast open the e file that black is not going to be particularly good at fighting for because his rook on h8 is stuck. And this knight is generally going in the right direction. Now, a wonder absolutely should have played the move a6 here, which I was expecting. And after take and take, the computer suggested that I actually go ahead and play knight c5 anyway. My plan here was actually to regroup this knight to d3, which I thought was a really good square, because I knew that e5 was the weakest square in black's gap and it pressures the f4 pawn. I thought if, okay, my queen can come back to d1 and then d2 to put further pressure on f4. If I can play knight d3, queen back to d1, queen d2, rook h4, you could easily imagine black starting to face concrete problems, and I think that white is better. The computer said knight c5 was even stronger. But a wonder played the move b6 and said no knight c5 for you. So, fair enough, that's not happening anymore. But are we happy or sad that black played the move b6?
Happy.
Yes, why are we happy?
Light square weaknesses.
Yes, he has huge light squared weaknesses. He is no longer able to kick our bishop off of the b5 square, and his king has become looser, and yeah, mainly the bishop on b5 is absolutely fantastic and will remain so. So, now that we've provoked the move b6, does our knight on b3 have much function? So, what should we do? Where should we, yes sir? Yeah, I quite like this, bring the knight to the d3 square. Alright, so there came knight b8, knight d3, king b7. Not subtle moves, the man wants to play a6. It's not like they're bad, but it's pretty obvious what he has in mind. Now what? I think one of the biggest assets that white has in this position is that bishop on d7 is a fumbling idiot, and I don't want to let it trade if I can avoid it. So.
94?
Let's raise our hands. But yes. So knight b4. We control the a6 square, so black can no longer play a6. But I would submit to you that after a5, your knight has to come right back to d3. Right? Did you just waste time? How about I offer you a draw and repeat the position of a7? So what we see here is, again, the same premise. We have moved back and forth, knight b4, knight d3, which you might think doesn't help our position at all, but essentially it means that in this position, rather than making the move knight b4 for ourselves, what we've done is we've played the move a5 for our opponent and then hit the clock and said, okay, you're a move again. And that's something that black is incredibly unhappy about for two reasons. One is that, as we've mentioned, the b5 bishop will be secure. We no longer have to worry ever about black playing a6. What's the other reason that black might regret having put the pawn on a5 in this position? Let's say a5, knight d3. What's the other reason that black might be dissatisfied about his pawn being on a5? Yes. Absolutely, he's made a hook in this position. Now here, black's position is miserable. He's got no space. He's getting choked. My pieces are all much better, but he's not collapsing immediately. It's not like I'm immediately taking stuff from or have a clear route to hit any weaknesses. The second that he is provoked into playing a5, the next thing you know, b4 is going to come and blow up his hand. It's going to open lines very, very fast. Now, it might not be that easy for us to give mate because I think it will be hard to include the h1 rook in the attack, but still, that potential is definitely there. So that said, it was black's best move. But most of the time, I mean, a wonder playing b6 was definitely a mistake. But most of the time when you play strong players, they're not going to make moves like a5 that worsen their position long term like this severely. So a wonder played the move queen d8, which, according to the machine, is a worse move than a5. The machine said a5 is best, but let's just say if black plays a5, you don't have to beat this far out to bring the knight back to d3. You know, that's pretty not rocket science, and then you've got the bishop on d5 forever, and someday you play b4. After queen d8, a little bit more work is needed. So while the main premise of this lecture is definitely the concept of my book, pawn stuff backwards, and much more about strategic chess in general, what's also important to know is that no matter how good you get at strategic chess, when you're playing strong players, when they can see the ship sailing into the rock, they will complicate the game. And they will find ways to make you work for it. All right, it's time to calculate now. You can no longer dribble the ball into the goal. You need to take a shot. Are you sure? Take a little time here, guys. I mean, at this point, I calculated out what, in my opinion, constitutes a forced win. You're really sure? Okay, what you got for me?
96.
Illegal. Do you mean 95?
Yeah, 95, where's the rook go?
Is that the extent of your calculation?
Yes.
95, where does the rook go? Okay, so let's, so 95 threatens the f7 pawn. I guess your idea is that while I would love to take on e5, that I can't because after d takes e5, the rook will be trapped. So let's say I play knight c5 and attack your queen and clear the e6 square. You calculate. It's there, guys. It's not even that difficult. Yes, in the back. Is that a hand in the back?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have idea, like, we can retrieve the queen and start pushing the pawn.
Pushing the a pawn, you mean? I mean, yeah, I guess you could, but as I mentioned, you have to, when you have your shot, you have to take it. Let me put it this way. When you play queen d1, I can almost guarantee you white is much better. Are you going to beat Magnus? After playing queen d1? I don't think I would. If we find the right move, I will beat Magnus, I promise. Yes.
Bishop a6.
Bishop where?
A6.
Okay, how do you expect the game to proceed and what have you accomplished?
Good. Then your knight takes a6, and then you take back with your queen.
Okay, but you have to speak a little bit louder in terms of bishop a6. If knight, even, I don't think knight a6 is a great move. I'd rather just go king b8. Sorry, I used the J word, my bad. After bishop a6, I'd rather go king a8. But even if I play knight takes a6, after queen takes a6, check king b8, I mean, you have to be knocking me out there because otherwise I don't see how you can look at this position and think my bishop on a6 is worse than his knight on b8 and I want to trade these two pieces. That doesn't seem like a favorable trade for white. This is definitely we've done our strategic job, we need to knock black out, and we need to calculate what to do. Yes, sir. And if I play d takes c4, let's say, and knight c5, I think feels a little sketchy to me. So d5, knight c5, bishop c6. Okay, so I guess I have to take it. You take with the pawn, king d8, maybe king a8. All of a sudden, this bishop is awake, this rook is awake. Like, if you think about this position, how stupid these two pieces are, you've just woken them up. Now, if you were on the spot, by all means, go for it. You know, if the move like crashes through directly, then yeah, sure. But unless you can immediately kill the guy. Also, if your c4 does a6 cause a problem? I think it might. Unless you can immediately kill the guy, you won't. No, a6. Yeah, but unless you can immediately kill the guy, you don't want to make a strategically dubious move like that. But there is a kill the guy move here, if we can find it. The move has already been mentioned, just nobody has followed it up or justified it correctly. That's where calculation comes into play.
After 95, you put a 9 on C6.
Well, 95, okay, so 95, if we're threatening the f7 pawn, and if black plays like knight takes g5 to take a pawn and stop it, then yes, a move like knight e6 is devastating. But after 95, black can play bishop takes e5, as we mentioned. And then after d e5, it looks like the rook is trapped, but there follows knight c5. This brings us to what's actually now been named the Shankland rule, named after me. I promise you I was not the first one to come up with this, but I was the guy who yelled and screamed about it the most. Which is that whenever you're calculating, and there's a move that you really, really want to make for some strategic purpose, and your opponent is preventing you from making it, the first question you should always ask yourself is, what happens if I do it anyway? And we can ask that question somewhere along the line. I don't think that helps you. I mean, that's actually not a great knight on e6 either. It's not defending a ton of stuff, and your rook on e1 is like this.
I was calculating that.
Yeah, I don't think it works so well. So, let's start from the top here. What's the move that we really want to play? What we already mentioned was the weakest square in Black's camp that we want to take advantage of. No, from the very top. Like, remember when all the way back here, when I said, why did I play bishop b5? We discussed this already, yes. Yeah, we want to pressure the e5 square. Getting a knight to e5 will cause a huge amount of damage to Black's position. When we get here, what we really want to do is pressure the e5 square. Now the problem with knight e5 is it looks like Black can take our knight. That brings us to that question. We really want to play knight e5. The problem is Black will take this knight from us. And then he's trading off a bad piece for a good piece. What's the first question we ask? What happens if I do it anyway? So this gentleman here had suggested this line after knight e5, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, when the rook on d6 will be trapped. The problem then is Black will go knight c5, hitting our queen and clearing the e6 square for his rook. But again, what's the first question we ask? What happens if I do it anyway? Following knight e5, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, knight c5. When we played d takes e5, what was our hope for our next move? What did we want to do next? We've trapped it, so what do we want to do with it next?
Take
Take it. All right, so after knight e5, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, knight c5, we know that we want to take the rook, but we can't get to it because our queen is hanging. What is the first question we ask?
What if we do?
Can we do it anyway?
Well, somebody tell me a variation. What happens after he takes d6?
Knight takes.
Yes.
Like e takes d6, knight takes a4, if rook e7, if queen takes, we take back and we promote on e8. If king a8, then bishop c6, knight takes, and we're threatening the queen and rook a7.
And what if king c8?
Then just rook c7 try.
Yeah. So well calculated, knight e5. And the point is that after bishop takes e5, d e5, knight c5, here, okay, to be fair, queen d1 probably wins after rook e6. You can clip the pawn on d5. But this move is very convincing. It's, again, the same premise. What happens if I do it anyway? And it's checks and captures all the way through. Once you force yourself to consider this, it's pretty straightforward. After this check, if Black takes the rook, we're going to make a queen. If Black plays king c8, we go rook c7. He has to take, and he has two hanging knights. He's going to drop a piece and lose the game. And if he plays king a8, I think Derek said bishop c6. I believe knight c6 is even more convincing, but they're both certainly good enough. We're threatening mate on a7, and after take, and king b8. King c8, d7, or king a8, rook takes b6, Black's going to have a bad day. So yeah, you mentioned this is a long variation, but I don't think it's a wildly difficult one. After knight e5 here, bishop takes e5, d e5, knight c5 is easy enough to see. And from here, it's checks and captures all the way through for like 2, 3, 4 moves. What you have to do, though, is force yourself to consider knight e5, and then force yourself to consider e takes b6. Once you've got there, I don't think the variation is so long or so difficult. And then Black ends up with a lost position. So instead, after knight e5, presumably a wonder saw this variation and brought his queen back to c7, which was the only way to cover the both f7 and c7 squares. And now you could at least argue that, I should point out that in the event of knight takes g5, knight c6 is a crusher, take, and knight b8, rook e7, and queen a7 are all hanging, and Black's not going to survive this one. So after queen c7, Black now potentially could take on e5 next because he has cleared the d8 square for his rook. He also could potentially take on g5. But his position is just barely holding together. The analogy I've often liked to use for this game is like, imagine you're on a raft. You've got holes in the raft. You're using your fingers to plug the holes. Normally, if some guy comes over with a little pencil and tries to do something, you're not going to have a problem with him. But if all of your fingers are already stuck plugging the holes, you know, the toddler with the pencil is going to be a problem. How can we be a toddler with a pencil here? Oh, one more weakness in the game, and Black's position falls apart. Yes.
Is it a bishop a6 or?
I'll take it, and then king comes back to b8. I think Black would be very happy to trade off this knight for your bishop, so unless you have a direct whip, you shouldn't do it. One weakness. Yes.
My first instinct is to play knight e2 c6, try to target the 7.
But is square sufficiently well controlled. Knight takes c6, knight c6, rook c6, and you're gonna lose two pieces for a rook. You're gonna trade these three pieces for these two. I don't think that's a good trade for you. So you have to poke one little weakness. Yes, in the back.
Knight a6.
Knight where?
A6.
Second best move. Are you gonna beat Magnus after that move?
No.
Find the best move and you will beat Magnus. Yes. Do you not care about the d4 pawn hanging? I can play d takes c4 and then the d4 pawn becomes weak. Yes.
Bishop a6.
Again, I think black's very happy to trade off his knight for your bishop. I don't think that helps you very much. Yeah. Game over. Go defend g5, please. Not happening, right? Sorry? Yeah, so the best move now is rook hd8, which is what a wonder played if queen d8, knight takes f7. He can take my knight, which we're not thrilled about, but we go rook takes c5, and when we take a queen central pawn for nothing, and then our bishop can regroup towards f3, and also the g5 pawn is forever safe. I think that's worth it. We take the d5 pawn, this is over. Yes, sir.
What if a6 after queen b3?
I probably can take d5 anyway. And this is really collapsing. The queen is hit, she moves, knight takes f7, and it's all falling apart. So, black had to play rook hd8, and now white's final piece that was semi-passive for this game enters the game with authority. Again, black cannot play bishop takes e5 because after ge5, his rook's going to be trapped. He cannot play knight takes g5 because of rook takes g7. So he tried a6 after bishop d3. I was a little concerned. When he played a6 at first, I was a little concerned that here he could play a5, kicking my knight away from the d4 square. Because if he plays bishop e5 directly, after rook e5, we're going to take the d5 pawn. I was a little worried at first that maybe he could do something like this, and after knight c2, bishop takes e5, and then say if rook e5, if rook e5, I can go knight c6. First, this rook will get kicked off e5, then black will take on g5, and the other rook is kicked off of h7, and now black is fighting back. But thankfully here, am I going to play knight c2?
Oh, taken any?
So here, bishop e4, and the only way is to defend this rook is queen d6 when we play what? Okay. Now this is actually a fun example. How many points of material is white about to win? No, much more. I think it's going to be like 12. I mean, like, so the queen has to move. We're going to take the rook on d8 with a check. Then we're going to take the rook on d5 with a check. Then we're going to take e6, and then this bishop on g7 is dead. I think we're going to take about 12 points of material right now. That's a pretty substantial amount. So instead of a5, I wanted to play king a7. No prizes for guessing why. He wants to play a5 next, and he wants me to not take on d5 in response. And here, again, white has several good moves, but there's one that I think is extremely good and convincing. And again, it comes down to this premise of remember the purpose of bringing your piece to a square. Once it served its purpose, does it have to remain? How should white finish off this game? Yes?
Knight f3.
That's a little sad. I don't doubt that it wins, but it's a little sad. I think we can be a bit more to the point. Yes? Yeah. This is a very nice move because now we're threatening to take the a6 pawn, which really forces him to play a5, the move he didn't want to play. When black plays a5, what square do you weaken? What do we do? Let's be more to the point. Yes?
Knight c6.
I think black has that square under control. But if we want to prepare knight c6, what do we do?
bishop b5.
Bring the bishop right back where it came from. So the bishop on b5 was like if we go back to this position that we had here, the queen on a4 and the bishop on b5 are fantastic. I played queen b3 to basically kick the rook away from h8 to win the h7 pawn. Now that we're here, does the queen really have that much more purpose on b3? Not really. You sort of think the queen going back to a4 would be good. It did its job. It forced black to bring the rook to d8 to defend b5, and we took h7 as a result. So we have this opportunity to bring the queen back, and then here we see once again, we have the key square under control. Black cannot take on g5 thanks to the hanging bishop on g7. He cannot take on e5 because after e5 his rook is trapped, and this game is all but over. So after king b7, the computer said the best move here was bishop e8 to go press through on f7, but I was a man on a mission. I brought my knight back to d3 and thought everything solid. You're not taking my g5 pawn, you're not taking my knight. If we recall before, like I was talking about this move knight b4, when I would be delighted to see black play a5 and knight b3, because I provoked this weakness. We're going to have the exact same position, except we will have black have gone rook hd8 and white gone rook takes h7, which was obviously a colossal change in white's favor. So this all sort of falls apart here. And well, I could have been more to the point. I think here as well, probably, I think the most human way to bring this point home is probably to just go knight bc6 and start trading everything like this. I take e6 at the end, and black's not going to save this rook ending. He's already done one pawn, we'll see if there's g6. That one I probably should have seen, but I brought the knight back to f3. And the rest of this game was not super interesting. But the big point that we saw here was that the key weakness of the b5 square and being able to provoke these moves a6, or b6 and a5 really gave white what he needed to take control of the key squares and ruin black's position. And you know, the question then becomes, would I have played this well and won this game had I not written Small Steps to Giant Improvement and studied this topic? I don't have a crystal ball, I don't know. Maybe I still would have won this game in the same way. But having those topics fresh in my mind and having just covered them really deeply made me feel very comfortable finding these moves. And while this was the biggest game of my life so far at the time, I felt really confident the whole time, and I never had to think that much or work that hard. And, I didn't feel nervous or pressure the way I would if maybe the position had been more unfamiliar to me, or if I didn't understand the themes as well. But here I just felt like I was doing everything I'd written about. So yeah, any question on this one? Yes?
How much of this game was preparation in advance? Or were you thinking over the board for most of this?
I definitely had h3. I had some analysis after knight a5. I know that I had checked on e6 f4. I remember checking that if black plays knight e4, aiming to stop knight d2. I remember that this was a winner. And then here after rook e1 and then gf3, black is totally lost, which is not too obvious. Like you don't look at this position and think it's totally over, but in fact it is. I remember that I had prepared this and then white's absolutely winning. I'm just going to make sure that's still the case, and I'm not totally wrong, but it's basically lost, yes. I think castle's long this was the first move out of my preparation. But I knew from the positions where black had played it right, like let's say after knight a5, this is the best move. I had known from this position that once I have sacrificed this pawn, my best plan is to try to abuse the e5 square with like knight d2, rook e1, knight f3, knight e5, especially because I don't believe the knight will remain on g4, we'll probably go back to f6. And so I was out of concrete preparation after castle queenside, but I knew the best plan was to abuse the e5 square, so knight d2 was, I thought knight d2 and rook e1 was incredibly obvious to bring the last pieces into the game. And this was the first moment where I really had to think. Because bishop e2 was not my first instinct. My first instinct was to play knight gf3 and bishop b5 to try to fight for the e5 square. But the more I started calculating some lines after saying knight gf3, h6, and I really wasn't that thrilled with my position. So I thought it was worth, even though I understood the bishop will not remain on e2 and will eventually go to b5, I thought it was worth a tempo to make sure that he will not play h6 on me. So, yeah, that's where I was at. other questions on this game? Okay, so with that in mind, I'd like to move on to C6. So
Is that in one of your books?
yeah, that one. No, that one is not in one of my books. It's, that one is, well, the previous game, the Spirits game, was in my small steps book, and then what I wanted to do is show games that I played shortly after writing the books to show how studying this topic helps me in my own play, and hopefully as a result can help you. So this next game here is a concept about the concept of double pawns. So here it's white to play. Obviously we're taking back on b3, but there's an open question: do we take with the pawn or do we take with the queen? Because sometimes double pawns capturing towards the center is a good idea, sometimes it's not. And do we think that this is a position where white should be playing a takes b3, or should he be playing queen takes b3? It's actually not the easiest question. Yes. Why?
Well, it activates your rook on a1.
What do you hope to do with your rook on the a file?
Pressure, keep pressure on the a5 pawn.
And do you think I will struggle to defend it?
No, not right now. No.
Do you think I will ever struggle to defend it?
Depending what happens with the b pawn, perhaps.
Do you think they're going to get the move b4 through?
The white play b4.
Well, you said what happens with the b pawn, which b pawn?
Oh, the black b pawn on b7. If it gets traded off, then the a pawn could come with
Traded with who exactly?
a central pawn, trade toward the center.
It's like if black captures back, b takes c6 or something?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what piece you're going to use to take on c6, but let's see. Anyone else want a takes b3? Yes.
Queen takes b3.
So you believe that a takes b3 is a mistake?
Well, yeah, because it doubles the pawns.
So it really comes down to, do we believe these double pawns are a weakness or a strength? So I will put in the plus category for a takes b3 is two things. One, we open up the a1 rook. Two, we capture towards the center to control more squares towards the center of the board. Those, I think, are the plus categories for a takes b3. Queen takes b3 leaves the position unchanged, as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing in the positive category, there's nothing in the negative category, it's approximately the same position as we see here. So the question is, does a takes b3 have more positives or negatives? We see that there's, we open the a file and we capture towards the center. Now when it comes to double pawns, there's three reasons I believe that double pawns can be deficient. One is they can be easier to attack. Two is they can fail to control key squares that otherwise could be better controlled. And three would be that they're deficient in making a passed pawn. Like obviously, double pawn mounts will not make a passed pawn. So let's talk about deficient in making a passed pawn. Do we believe that that is relevant here after a takes b3? No, we're not making a passed pawn with a b3 or queen b3. That's not a thing. All eight pawns are still on the board. When it comes to, let's say, pawns becoming a weakness, do we think that white bringing his pawns to b3 or a3 could, to b2 and b3 could weaken them in any way? Yes. Anyone think they could become weak? So this comes down to a fundamental rule that I wrote about in Small Steps, which is extremely important to understand, which is that double pawns, the way that double pawns become weak tends to be when the forward double pawn cannot be defended by another pawn. What we see here is that after a takes b3, this is our forward double pawn. Can it be defended by another pawn? No, it cannot. And this is going to turn this pawn into a weakness. Had black's pawn remained on a6, and then white were able to advance b4, then his forward double pawn is defended by another pawn. Would the pawn be weak when it's on b4? Absolutely not. So what we need to be considering is this pawn going to become a weakness? And the answer is a resounding yes. After d5, for example, here, okay, so black centralized the rook. It's not, for what is it? It's not ridiculous to bring the rook to b6. But anyhow, when black centralized the rook, bishop e3 was a bit careless. Black took on e4, take on c5. And here, I think white misplayed this a bit, but now black is like one move away from playing queen e6 and laughing. The pawn on b3 is going to become a huge weakness. Well, again, had this pawn like gone to a6 and white moved the pawn on b4, I think white would be totally fine. It really comes down to the forward double pawn being highly protected. So here, for example, I believe queen e6 is the best move, and I think white basically collapses. Sergey played queen d5, which is a bit careless. He still won the game, actually, here. Rook takes d5, yeah, this was wrong. My suspicion is Sergey calculated this far and thought he wins after b6 and this knight e3 followed by d5 when white is back. It took some effort, but eventually black won this game. And here, yeah, b4 was a good move because it gets the pawn off the big square. Anyhow, that was something that definitely stuck in my mind, having studied this game a bit in preparation for the book. So with that in mind, I want to move on to a game that I played at the Olympiad in 2018, where U.S. tied for first in silver on tiebreak. I think the Chinese had better tiebreaks than us. It's playing black against Rauf Mamedov, who was over 2,700 live at the time. Now, having studied this position, or having seen this position previously in the book, what should black play? Are we scared of him playing a takes b3?
No.
We go ahead and take this bishop. It's important because I believe that the critical plan for white or for black, honestly, in the Italian is you want to move your d pawn forward. And here I was calculating d5, but after d4 I didn't like what I was seeing. I thought this complications were working out for white, for example, of take. He will take everything and go f4 on me, and this is bad news. And here, after take on d4, c takes d4 back. This also just feels bad. He's going to a5. So I took on b3. And my thought was, now I can play d5 next. And the real question is, does white play a takes b3 or queen takes b3? Well, now we have the answer. What should he do? He should take with it. And positions about equal. Instead, Mamedov played a takes b3. Not only did he play a takes b3, he spent 10 minutes doing it. So this was a man who, well, did not read my book, but because I might have done him a favor here. But it basically, like, even though this is a relatively obscure position, and to be fair, it's slightly different because in the Abrahamian-Ehrenberg game, white's rook was on e1 and the knight was on f1. But okay, white was going to play knight g3 that game. White's going to play rook e1 this game. It's effectively the same position. So even like literally almost the exact same position came up in one of my own games that I was studying. And to be fair, this is relatively early in the game, but this is not opening theory. We're in an early middle game at this point. But so now when d5 comes, after d4, for example, this should be very nice for black. It can probably take on e4 even. But when d5 came, my whole argument now was that this b3 pawn is going to be a weakness. So here, I just regrouped my pieces like this, and then when he played c4, I was pretty happy to see it because now I was weakened more squares. And I went after the weakness of knight d7. Now I believe white should have played d4 here. I think this was sort of his last chance. But say I were to take this one, we trade the queens. Even deep into the endgame, I think white still has very serious problems with the b3. For example, if I start with knight c5 now, he cannot play d4 on pain of knight b3 when I will take on d4 and play bishop takes b4. But otherwise, I mean, rook b6 is coming. And this forward double pawn being hanging is a huge problem. If you compare that to what would the position be like if white's pawn were on d5, and the forward double pawn is defended by another pawn, I don't think there's any reason for white to be worse. In fact, I'd be a little bit worried with white. So it really just comes down to this premise. Be very wary of doubling your own pawns if your forward double pawn cannot be defended by another pawn. That's not to say it can never be right, but it does mean that it's something you should be more worried about. Moving forward in the way this game went, around here I was already feeling very good about my position. The queen on b1 is sort of weird. And another point of double pawns is, remember, they can lose control over a key square. That's something I did mention. Think about how much nicer white's position would be if you could get control over a key square. It's sort of change a lot, right? I'd be booted back to A6 immediately before the come, and the tables would quickly turn. So here, what we saw was by developing this understanding that specifically this pawn mass with B2 and B3 was deficient for white, specifically because my pawn was on A5 and that his pawn could not make it to B4 as a result. This is what sort of, I believe, led me to win this game in the Olympia. So I repeated this with Queen G6. I was not planning on making a draw. And then when he tried again here, I did not make the draw. I think I found a very good move. And I'd like to invite you guys to try to find it as well. Yes, sir. How does that work when white takes everything? I can play rook takes d3 and queen takes d3. I have it under control.
F5.
And you will go knight g3 and then the e5 pawn will drop. It's a little bit of patience to play this position. Yes.
Knight d4, you attack with d5.
Knight where? d4?
Yep.
Okay, but he will play knight takes d4 and this helps you so much. Maybe the bishop. I'll give you guys a hint. Think about why double pawns are deficient. Yes.
Arm e6.
Okay, for what it's worth, guys, I think he's threatening knight g3 and taking your e5 pawn from you, so you have to be at least a little bit thinking about that. Yes. Second best move. You want to think about why double pawns are deficient in the first place. Losing control over key squares, inability to make a passed pawn, and can become a weakness. Another thing to consider whenever you're confused in any position is always ask the three questions, which my own coach Jakob over always tells me. Three questions. One, what is my worst place piece? Two, where are the weaknesses? Three, what's my opponent's idea? So we'll start one by one. What is our worst place piece?
The bishop.
Bishop on f8, yes. Where are the weaknesses? Long term, it's b3, but short term, what's the short term weakness we're sort of targeting?
E5.
Well, in white's position, what's the short term weakness we're trying to target?
Oh.
The d3 pawn, yeah. d3 is white's short term weakness. And what's my opponent's idea? Yes. Perhaps that's one of them. Yes, knight g3 is another. So we have this idea. Okay, so our worst place piece is our bishop on f8. The weakness is the d3 pawn, and we're potentially worried about white going d4. This sort of brings us to a natural move that we could consider. Yes. But you're doubling your pawns. Do we care about these double pawns? Is our forward double pawn? Okay, it can't be defended by another pawn, but is it going to become a weakness? The key weakness in white's position is the d3 pawn. The reason we were not taking it from him directly was that when we stuck our queen on g6, the knight on e4 blocked us. That knight has been exchanged. It's totally not ridiculous for black to go f6, rook d7, rook d8, queen g6, and simply take that pawn off the board without white having anything to say about it. Right? So, furthermore as well, we have stopped the d4 move that you've spoken about. In the event of knight g3, we're threatening queen takes g3, so black is not taking e5. So when we put all these together, bishop c5 makes a ton of sense. Then after king h2 from white, now and only now I play knight g4, which is a move somebody else recommended at some point. But the difference is that now because black's bishop is on the c5 square, we are able to avoid having to take back the pawn to close the d file and make it easier for white to defend d3. So I took back, there came g4, queen c6, queen g6, queen c6 here, and now I played bishop c5. Bishop has done its job. It managed to come to c5 to get knight g4 through. Now it's time to come back home. Now I believe here, I think white's in big trouble no matter what he does, but I think he absolutely had to play rook g1. Rook g5 looked for the best. I don't think it should work, but you have to try. Like this is, I could at least imagine getting myself checkmated here. If he goes G5, knight takes G5, throws D4, sacrifices a pawn, tries to get the queen to H7, I could at least imagine an accident happening. Like it feels like white has some practical counterplay. Instead, Mamedov took on C5, and then after rook E3, I was able to bring the knight back, and I solidified this position, which is exactly what I want. Now, the next thing we have to point out here is white has something of a fortress that we're going to have to try to break down. So it should be very obvious here that white has no counterplay ever. He's on all the weaknesses, but it's not that easy to make further progress. So we need a plan. What are we going to do? Yes, sir?
Really quick before this idea, could we go like king h7, g6, kick the knight, and then try to get our knight into d4, which attacks b3?
Hey, I'm worried that king h7 you're going to walk into a problem.
Yeah.
Like for example, if you were to play king h7 here, d4 is a huge problem. And now things are
Right.
Yeah. Also, like even if you play g6 and white goes knight g3 and knight e4, I'd start to be a little bit concerned. I think here that probably white's knight is strictly better than black's, because no matter where black puts his knight, like I think the problem for black is that the best square for his knight is clearly d4, but as long as the knight remains in the d4 square, we're not actually going to target the d3 pawn. So I kind of like just forcing the exchange with these guys directly. He cannot go back to b3. I don't think he wants to have g3. I don't think he wants to lose the d3 pawn like that. But yeah, I thought this was fine. But here, we need a plan. Like white plays rook f3. And he's ready to play rook e3 as needed. And it's not easy at all to figure, I mean, obviously black's in fantastic shape, but actually bringing this point home and winning the game is not the most trivial thing. And I was very happy with the plan I came up with. Let's see what you guys have. Yes, sir.
Queen c6.
Sorry, you said queen c6?
Yeah.
Any special reason?
You're pinning his rook.
Okay, but I could play rook e3 or rook e4 or king g3. You're not going to kill white right here. What we need is a long-term plan. Like queen c6 is sort of the I'm going to kill you move, like trying to get mate or something, or win tactically. You're not going to do that here. You don't have enough firepower, and white has everything under control. What you do have is a situation where white is stuck, can never make any counterplay, can never improve his position, and we can think very slowly and methodically of how we want to put more pressure. Yes, ma'am. Okay, that's a good start, but I will play rook e to e3 and then what? Then what? The problem is white has all the weaknesses defended. The biggest weakness, he has two weaknesses I would say here, the d3 pawn and the b3 pawn. And the problem is we don't have enough firepower to target either of them. The b3 pawn our rooks cannot get to, only the queen can. And the queen sitting on c2 means that we're not going to pressure beyond that. Yes?
The d5.
I think that doesn't help you. He's going to play c takes d5 and up to the c file for now. But it's very slow, yes. Yes, you absolutely can. We need to make more weaknesses to stretch white's defenses. So making kingside weaknesses sounds like a good idea. How will you open file lines on the kingside? Okay, h5 is a serious thought. But keep in mind when you play h5, there's a couple things that could happen. For example, if you play h5 here, I could go g5, and then say f takes g5, rook f5, and I'm starting to attack stuff, or queen d2 instead. I'm not quite sure you're ready for it. I could also go g takes h5 and quickly transfer my rooks to the g5. So,
Yeah, king f7.
why?
Because it allows your rook to get in there to that push.
You want to get the rook to h8 and then push h5?
Yeah.
Okay, but king f7, if you play rook h8, I'm always going to meet h5 with
No,
g5.
king f7. No.
Yeah, so king f7, let's say
okay.
rook e3.
So I would rook h8.
Right, but the problem here is that whenever you play h5, I'm still going to play g5.
Oh,
So what we have to think though is white going to do anything to us in the next 10 moves if we give him 10 moves in a row? No, right? I think rook d8 is a good place to start. I mean, if nothing else, we got the rook to a better square with the rook on e3. That's easy enough. But the question is, how do we make progress from here? And if we believe that white is doing absolutely nothing, and he really is doing nothing, we have all the time in the world. We know that we need to make another weakness on the king side. So what should we do first? Yes? g5 is a thought. You want to play g5 to fix the pawn so that when after h5 you cannot play g5 himself. Yeah, that's definitely part of black's plan. But after g5, let's say white goes rook f5 and then starts to play rook f3. This is a little bit annoying. If we're going to open our king side, are we happy that our king is on g8? Yes?
Since the position's closed, we can take the time to move the king to the queen side before playing rook h8 and h5.
Stick the king on b7. We have all the time in the world. We know that black is going to play for g5 later. There's no reason not to simply bring our king. Once the king is over here, we're going to have so much of an easier time opening the king side. Right? So this helps the position a lot. So after rook f3, rook g3 was not the smartest move I've ever seen, but still, I think white was in trouble anyway. How do we proceed further to make better position? Yes, sir.
Queen h1 check.
Okay, he will play rook g1 and your queen will be kicked away. Yes.
G6.
Why?
Because then you can push either H5 or F5 and then that would make first serve.
Well, that will open the g file, which white is currently occupying. Yes.
d5.
b5 I don't like. We just spent all this effort to put our king on the queen side, and opening the queen side now seems... We want to open the side of the board our king's not on. So we put our king on the queen side, we want to open the king side, yes. Okay, g5 is the second lesson. We definitely want to play g5 so that when we play h5 next, white cannot take it. But after g5, we always have weaknesses on the f file. Is there a way that we can solve that problem in advance? Yes, sir. Yes. I really like this move, rook f4 a lot. We stopped white from occupying the f file, and now we have a simple plan. Play g5, fix that pawn on g4, and next up, eventually, we'll play h5, taking advantage of the hook and white's position. So king g1, g5, rook d1, and I play queen e8. Not a very subtle move, a pretty darn obvious way. So king g2, h5, rook e4. And here, it's still not totally trivial to break through. The computer says black is winning every which way, but I found a move that I was very happy with. We just want to open the king side, not close it. Yeah. Yes, that is a good move. But after rook f3, you have to see the follow-up. And I had a really nice idea in mind here. Yes. Sorry? I don't love that. He will play rook f takes f4, and then I guess he played g takes f4, and I don't know, s3 or something, and I think that's not great. Yes?
You could take on f3, king f3, and then go f5. Wait.
G takes f5.
Yeah, just g, just gf, yeah.
I think he's holding it together. We need a little bit of patience here. Yes? Yeah, someone mentioned that already, but like, I really don't, I think this rook on f3 is really bad, and I'd love to avoid letting it get exchanged if all possible. So here, white takes this one. Black is much better here, there's no doubt, but I'm not that convinced. It feels like this rook, like if I take d4 next, it's definitely a draw, so you're gonna have to bring the rook right back, and it seems like it's not doing great. Yeah?
Pawn to f5,
Well, he'll play g takes f5.
and then pawn to d4.
This is a bit aggressive. So gf5, g4. I guess I take this one and take this one and queen g2 or something. It looks a little bit scary, but wait, d4 is not. So this looks scary for white, but I'm not convinced. Maybe we can take d3, take this one, rook d4, put f3. Maybe white's just made it, but I think this is not that great. Also here, I don't think we need to be so rash. There's a much simpler move. Yeah.
Rook takes rook.
Which one?
I'm sorry, rook takes f3.
After king f3.
And then pawn takes check.
Okay, but now we've traded pieces, and white's rook king is going to come to e2, and his king is going to be pretty safe. I don't think we can practice weaknesses so much anymore. We don't need to do anything drastic here. Yeah, the back.
Rook d4.
We've already mentioned rook d4 G4, I don't play rook.
Rook H8?
It's reasonable. I'm just going to show the book because this one is A, it's hard, and B, somewhat of a debate on mine. Last guess, yes.
What do you think about H takes G4 and then if Rook takes G takes up H3 like as a in between?
Well, okay, H takes G4, he's going to play H takes G4 back though. And the question is, did this help you or not?
E6.
Close. Why do you want to go 26?
Because that pawn takes pawn.
Yeah, you're threatening the G4 pawn, but is there a more effective way to threaten the G4 pawn? Yeah. I like queen D7 much more, because in addition to threatening the G4 pawn, this also threatens to take on F3 and then take on D3. So here the problem, for example, for white is, I think he has to play rook G3. There's no other move. We're threatening, I mean, I guess he could play G takes H5, but like, he'd really love to trade off this rook, but now the problem is D3 is not. And he's not going to save it, thanks to this move. So with HG4 being a colossal threat, and rook takes F3 check also being a threat, so like if king G3, I imagine I should be able to win this one without a ton of discussion. Rook G3 sort of becomes a forced move, and now I really like the next move I made, which is queen H7. What am I threatening with this move? Yes. Yeah, rook D3 is a huge threat. What can white do to stop it? Yes. Rook E3 backwards, yeah, but that's also a very good sign for black because the rook on F4 is not free. And let's say I go rook H8 and I'm ready to take on G4 next. This looks like a problem. Yes. Okay. F3. Now, be very careful. There's moves that are strategically horrible and very easy to discount because they're strategically horrible, but if they win a rook immediately, you should probably make them. What should black play? Yeah. We don't want to lock the king side, but if we're going to take an entire rook, we're good to go. So, but the fact that this move H4 exists is why I chose to play queen H7 instead of take and now queen H7. Because here, if he plays like F3, I wasn't as. Actually, probably rook H3 is better. Yeah, rook H3 first. But yeah, by starting with queen H7, I'm threatening to play rook takes D3. He can't play F3. So at this point, white felt the need to play G takes H5, which is a very, very bad sign for him. Because now he has the weaknesses as well. So he took and played C5 with the hope of sort of opening some kind of counter play towards my king. Now, this is something that you'll often find is that when somebody has a long-term weakness that you can't actually get to, oftentimes if you can pressure them in different ways, they may just give you access to that weakness voluntarily. And white has done exactly that here. So, what should we do? There's a move here that was, people have called for a lot in the past, that was wrong in the past, but now works very nicely. Yes, ma'am? Yes, rook D4. And the biggest reason for this to work is very simple. This pawn is no longer here. I have a very simple plan. Boom, boom, take your pawn. That pawn that became weak all that time ago. Here, white had all these other problems to solve because I outplayed him in other ways. Once he was sort of felt like he could no longer save the game by waiting, and felt like he needed to open lines on the queen side. Next thing you know, he's simply given me access to the weakness, and now I'm going to take it from him. So he tried before. I don't know why. I think this may have just been a blunder. He was getting low on time, and it's hard to defend like this forever. But there comes rook takes b4. Finally, I took the pawn. After rook f3, there's queen f7. It's also very important, by the way, that I brought my rook to b4 so that if he ever plays c6 check, his queen does not have access to the c4 square, so his queen will not join the attack. If I had done something else here, like something stupid like queen h6, and he got to go c6, and let's say here queen c4, all of a sudden queen h6 is a problem, and now who's attacking who? So we have to be a bit careful, but rook d4 kept all of these squares nicely under control. We played b4, and now, at the end of all this, I can solidify the pawn up. Alright. Don't be an idiot like me. How should we take on b6? Yes, sir.
With your queen?
Sorry?
With your queen.
With the queen? You're an idiot like me. Yes. Of course. We should preserve the structure. I mean, there's just no reason at all. I was not the smartest and took with the queen. I thought I was crashing through on b2 directly, but I had missed it after b3. I cannot take on b3 because the rook takes f6. And then the queen endgame will not be that convincing. And so it's still winning here, and but it took a lot more effort than it should have. Had I taken with the pawn like a normal person, black wins very easily. And this was a case of being too fancy and too clever when being simple and prosaic would have been more than sufficient. And yeah, here it took a lot of effort. So anyhow, I think that will do it for this went way over time compared to what I wanted. That will do it for small steps one. This premise that pawns don't move backwards. Anybody have any questions on this book or anything, or should I move on to probably some of the next one? Yes, sir. It's the same as taking with the queen. It just cripples the structure for now without getting anything direct for it. I mean, it's sort of academic because I do believe black is winning after any move basically, but I think c takes d6 was far and away the cleanest way. Like probably after cd6, the easiest is next to go queen c6 and force a queen trade. He can take f6 if he wants, and I will take b2 and the pawn will queen c7 very fast. Like I don't know, let's say when I put king f1 and I play queen c6. He has to trade the queens, and like, yeah, I mean, something like this, I think black's going to win this race by like 5 games, not even remotely close to the 8 points. I think this would have been a very, very clean way to win the game. But yeah, so any questions on this game or any from this book? We'll move on to part 2. So we'll do just a brief session on part 2. Unfortunately, I'm having some small issue with the local file on my computer. That's not a problem. I can definitely get it from my drive online, but it does mean I'm going to need to take a 2-minute break so I can get that loaded. So talk amongst yourselves. This will be 2 minutes.